Hello again, I'm Derek Grimmel, the developer of the Queen vs. Rook training database. And today we'll go a little further with cages. When we're talking about the diagonal and the Philidor position, we saw that cages are a way of pretty much ending the game when the defending king is on the edge of the board. But a cage farther away from the edge is a way for the attacker to control the game and force the defender back. So for example, if we start in this position, the queen checks there to take away both checking squares of the rook. Naturally, the king follows proper procedures and tries to move toward the center. So we give another check that also holds on to both checking squares, and the defending king goes there. Good choice, as going to c5 loses the rook to a check on f8. And now we can bring our king forward, knowing that black can only get in one check because we have the cage pattern here where the king and the queen are controlling one of the rook's checking squares. Defending kings like to have their rook in front of them so that they can ward off the attacking king. And the way you break that is by having the king and queen control one checking square. That way the defender may get in one check or two checks, but then they've got to stop and do something different. Well, in this kind of position, there are two basic things that the attacker can do. Here's one that doesn't work. Sending the rook to the side of the board where the queen is. This pretty much is always going to lose it to a check here, followed by a fork from f8. So the rook really doesn't want to go to the same side of the board as the queen is on. One of the two defenses is to drop back and interrupt the diagonal of the queen. When this happens, the best thing for the attacker to do is jump up here and give check, and the defender has two options. As you can see, if he falls back to c8 or b8, then the attacking king simply walks forward and the cage has successfully shoved the defender back against the edge of the board. So the two better options are either to go to d8 or to b7. If the defender goes to b7 from this position, the proper thing to do is follow with the king. Notice that the rook can't come forward to do a cutoff. The king can't fall back, or the attacking king just walks forward one more line and the defender is in deep trouble. And again, if he tries to go to a7, well, then the attacker has a very quick Philidor position just by bringing the king to c6. So from here, what will happen is that the rook will go here, and the queen will check here, and we simply repeat the pattern. If he tries to mount a distant defense, then we use the ideas we saw in the javelin position. Give checks from the diagonal next to the diagonal of the rook. We're controlling the checking square here. So now the king can walk forward. And we have a triple threat. The rook can give one check, and then there are just too many mate threats on the board. So let's back this up. Here's our cage position. What the rook likes to do is go to the side of the board where the queen isn't. That's the other good defense besides falling back and interrupting the diagonal of the queen. So if you go to the opposite side, then what happens naturally is the queen attacks here, the king falls back, and we have a third rank type position. Now what you'll note is that this isn't a third rank defense because the defending king isn't on either of these squares. That means that the defender can't uphold the third rank defense. The queen is already controlling 5 squares. These two are controlled by the threat of a fork from either e8 or f8. And when the king moves here, well, there's just no safe place on the third rank. The rook has to go here, and you can see it's a 2-move It's two moves to a fork. It didn't matter if the rook went to a2. It would be check on f8 and then f7. So let's move on. So the cage is a big restrictor. Let's move our position a little bit to the right and give the rook more room. And then you see what happens is we simply develop into a normal third-rank defense. Queen takes away one of the two central squares, and the defending rook wants to move to the same to the opposite color of what the king is standing on. It's easy to remember that this is one of many examples where if a person can form a rosette, it's almost always the best move to play on the board. That's where all four pieces are a knight's move apart from each other. So the king comes here, the rook goes there, and we're in the killing position for the third-rank defense. And we can see that now the rook has nowhere to go to on the other side of the board. So falling back to obstruct the line of the queen is the best thing to do. Naturally, the queen checks here. If the king goes to a7, then it's important to know the best thing to do here. We already have the king cornered. Our king is very close to the square c6, which is where it wants to be for the Philidor position. Simply fall back. Control the long diagonal. Remember from the corner positions video, usually the queen does best on the long diagonal when you've got the king cornered. So we may have a move like that, and then we go here. We're forcing Philidor, or we're going to fork the rook. So that's what happens on a7. If you're the attacker, it's important to remember this. Simply fall back, transfer the move to the other guy, and you've pretty well got him. But the other option is to go to c8. Now this position, this is called the wishbone position. It can occur anywhere on the board. And wherever the wishbone occurs, the attacker wants to turn it into a thorn. That would be with this move. So all you do is walk forward, create the cage on this square. The rook can't check you there. What he's going to do is what you always should do. If you can form a rosette, form it. However, more points about this. If we slid this position here all the way over to the right, it's just the Philidor position, but it's not in the corner. So that's a thorn position. A Philidor is a special case of a thorn. Attacking king is touching the rook. The queen is controlling one checking square and blocking the king's escape. That's a Philidor position. Now, there's one, whenever you see a wishbone, you as the attacker turn it into a thorn. But if the defending king is on the edge of the board, this is something that even top players have missed. You end resistance very quickly if you pivot the thorn by first giving check here. Obviously, the defender's only move is there, and now create the thorn. Well, there's just not much good that black can do here. If the king comes up to d6, then queen b8 pins and wins the rook. If the king goes anywhere else that it's legal to go to, the rook is simply taken. And the rook is obstructed by its own king. If it scampers away down the board, the very first check from white is going to be queen d5 check, and we can be pretty confident that the rook is going to be rounded up rapidly because white's king has already progressed to the 6th rank. So from here, the defender's only really decent move is to check here, upon which the attacker goes here. The king has to fall back, and we have an absolute 7th position, which is covered in another video. So the two things we've touched on here, they'll probably show up in another video. Whenever you're the attacker and you have a wishbone position like this, turn it into a thorn. But if the defending king is already on the edge of the board, pivot the thorn by checking here and then touch the rook. about the only thing the defender can do that doesn't immediately lose. Block the queen, upon which you give check, like this. King drops back, absolute seventh. Again, we have our cage, rook goes away, give a check here, turn it into a third rank defense. Notice that this check is really not good because here, 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 black has the move. Black always wants to put the rook on a color square opposite from what the attacking king is on, but here black can't do that. So we go here, and we go here, and the third rank defense can no longer be upheld. There's no safe third rank square for the rook. Black is going to have to give it up. Again, we have a cage. It's on the other side, so again, black moves away from the queen. We get the check here. King drops back, and we're already in the killing position for the third rank defense. With white to move, the win's trivial. That costs the rook. If we're on the other side, pin and win the rook. Cages can show up even farther from the edge of the board. Here we're 3 ranks out, but the same principles apply. Black plays over here away from the queen, and it's pretty easy to create a third rank defense on the 4th rank. The very same principles apply, including the same winning maneuver. We already have the king and rook positioned like this, so we cross the T. King comes up, check there, over, check there, rook falls back. And now we have an additional check because we're on the 4th rank. The defender cannot go here because there will be an immediate fork of king and rook here. So the defender has to go here, and he's forced back. Nothing new here. Move away from the queen. Give a check. Third rank defense on the 4th rank. Taking away one of the central squares. The rook may now go to A5 rather than C5. And when white goes here, black has either the choice of playing to B5 and playing it like a third rank defense, or going to A1 and playing it like a harassment defense.